On this week's episode, we talk about personal therapy, we talk about productivity hacks or more productivity hacks, and we talk about getting your team to consensus. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to episode 17? 17?
17.
Word. Got a few topics today. Again, just questions. If I haven't asked you a question yet, I will. I'm kind of just kind of hustling, just bugging people each week and seeing if they have any questions, because the questions are coming in naturally. Start asking me some questions so I don't have to reach out. But either way, so we've got 3 questions. They're good questions. Quickly before we get into them, just a couple of updates on things that we're doing. We've still got the book of the week. So I am a little bit behind. I'm a whole week behind. I'm reading this book called The Sprint, and it's a pain in the ass. It's just too big a book for me. I'm a slow reader. It's just taking me a long time. I will get through it this week probably. What else are we doing? Tips of the week. We're starting that again. So I'm basically just bugging all the people on my team, being like, "Hey, Serge, Mr. Developer, give me a tip on code or CSS or whatever," and he provides me with that, and then I share that with you guys. We're still doing office hours, where I try and invite everybody that I can to join in on Google Hangout and Facebook Live, and we just talk shop. Could be anything. Bring your questions, just bring yourself essentially, and we will talk, and I will do my best to be of service in any way possible. Worst case, we have a good conversation. So that is Wednesdays, 5:30 Pacific Standard Time, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. That's every week, 1 hour. You can very easily find it. Just go to facebook.com/the Adam G. Steele, something like that. The Adam G. Steele. You'll link to it, right, Danny?
I'll link to it, yeah.
Cool, because that might entirely be wrong. What else are we doing? We're doing other stuff. I'm not going to get all into it, but those are a couple things I wanted you to check out. Oh, one more thing. I want you to go to adamgsteele.com. I've got a newsletter there. I am putting my heart and soul into that newsletter. Just a little thing. Danny, have you signed up?
I will be.
Danny, sign up, man. It's dope. Like the last one I did, I started talking about, actually it's a topic that we're going to talk about on this episode. Fuck, let's just jump into it. Let's get it. So the first one, Danny, please.
Okay, first question is...
It's the bolded. I bolded it.
Yeah,
He's reading off a laptop because I was too
right.
lazy to put it anywhere else.
On a previous episode, you mentioned you regularly saw a therapist. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, and this is something I kind of kept... I don't actually remember when I mentioned this. Maybe I didn't. Maybe he's making it up. Paul, if you're making it up, you're in shit. But so about 2 years ago, well before this show, I'd kind of poured everything into the relationship I was in. It was 2.5 years ago, I guess, 2.5, something like that. Anyways, into a relationship I was in, my business, and both were like really sucking hard. Both were just not in a good place. The business was in debt. I was in debt. I was just being very reckless about how I managed the business, how I managed cash flow, about the projects that I worked on, and so on and so forth. And then the relationship I was in was crap as well. It basically led me to a point where it seemed like the only option, or the only wise option, was to seek the help or the opinion or the guidance of somebody much more qualified than myself. She's a psychiatrist. She's wonderful. I imagined, 6 months maximum, just, have her fix me essentially. And what happened is once I kind of worked through the stuff that was causing me the most pain, it turned into more just kind of somebody to talk to. Again, I internalize things a lot. I don't actively seek the opinion of others. Again, something I'm working to change. I don't actively seek counsel. I deal with it a lot inside my head. It just sort of gave me this regular opportunity, this excuse, this commitment to spend 1 hour, at the time it was 1 hour every single week, with someone else, and just say, hey, this is what happened this week. This is where my head's at. What do you think? And just to get a very objective, very unbiased opinion on what I was feeling. I guess after the first year, or maybe after the first 14-ish months, now it just turned into optimizing. And this is kind of where my recommendation comes from. Is it doesn't have to be a therapist. It's just somebody to talk to that maybe is not involved in business at all, or in works for the same company as you, or maybe isn't a friend, just somebody totally objective, totally unbiased that you can speak to that can just grant you their opinion. Paid or unpaid, doesn't matter. Now it's just every week that I go to see her, or every second week now, because I don't feel that I quite need to go as often, is I just sort of bring the weeks or the 2 weeks garbage that's been in my head, good and bad, and just put it out on the table. We kind of sift through it and we see, what's good, what's bad, and then what could be better, and just tweak that a little bit. She'll ask me, little questions that I wouldn't think to ask myself, and we will just tweak, optimize, and then I will take those things. So usually I leave with like 3 action items, and then for those next 2 weeks, I'll go home, and then it's really hot in here, man. Do you feel that?
A little bit, yeah.
Holy smokes, I'm gonna be sweating bullets here in a second. And then we just work on those things. So then I go home, I type them all up in a summary, make sure that I understand, and we go over them a few times because it sinks in really, really slow for me. And then I start attacking each one of them, and then I just play with it and I see what happens, and then I report back, and then we work on something else. One of the reasons that I decided to address this question on the show is there's like this stigma attached to this whole thing, and it doesn't have to be like you're depressed or something like that. It doesn't have to be that. It could just be self-optimization. There's lots of people that aren't psychiatrists, that aren't like registered therapists, that do this work. And I'm not recommending you go to see like a life coach or something like that. And if you do, make sure that person isn't 25, because that's bullshit. But like, somebody who has has been around the block, has a diverse background, etc., has lived in a few countries, whatever. It's not a bad idea, and it's not something you need to be ashamed of or feel weird about. It's just think about it as someone to speak to. That's all it has to be. Just get out of your own head, because as entrepreneurs, as people in general, I think we tend to live too much in our own heads, and I don't think that's entirely healthy. So those are my words on that. Let's go.
All right. Next one. I've tried every productivity hack in the book and still find myself working horrendous hours. Got any tips?
Yeah, I could have asked myself that question. No matter how many productivity, I think I would turn off my phone when I do one of these things. There we go. One thing that kind of just destroys everything is how much you are saying yes. And by that I mean like the projects you are taking on. I am very goal oriented, so for me it's all about beating last month, and a lot of times that has to do with revenue. So I'm constantly, right now we're at the 27th, 28th, I think, 3 days. Yeah. Whatever comes across my desk in those days, I'm going to say yes to, because I want my revenue to be such. But the problem is that is a very short-sighted way of looking at things, because those things that you take on, they hinder your long-term growth. Not all of them, but some of them. Some of them you aren't meant to take on because you don't need to take them on. So the way, and they'll just slow you down in the long run, because there'll be things that like, one, you don't make any money on, and maybe you don't know that at first, or you let's say that they say, oh well, there's going to be lots of work to come after this. There generally isn't, so forget about that. You just want to be nice. Maybe it's someone, it's a friend or an acquaintance, and you just want to help them out. Forget that. What triggered this in my mind, and now I'm thinking about it a lot, is I was listening, as I do, the Tim Ferriss podcast. He had this guy named Derek Sivers on his show. I think he founded and then sold something called cdbaby.com. Successful dude, but just really intelligent dude as well. And so his saying is, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a hell no. And I think there is a balance there. There is like a time for that, and there is not a time for that. It's not a time for that when you're starting out, because you kind of you want to say, you should quite honestly say yes to everything, because you need to get your name out there. It doesn't matter if you make money. You should make some money, but really what it's about is creating relationships, getting testimonials, creating case studies, building those relationships, and just generally getting some experience under your belt. That has its own value beyond the money itself. So say yes to everything, but there becomes a point, and if you're not careful, you will not be looking for this point, and you'll continue to have that same sort of outlook or behavior, and frankly I do, because probably because of that sort of goal-oriented or fanaticism, that need to beat every month previous. At some point you will be slowing yourself down by saying yes, and so you have to you'll want to, I think, and I'm just testing this out for myself, is start really examining everything that you take on and say, is this what's going to get me excited? Is this what's going to get my team excited? Because quite honestly, what's going to further your interest, your team's interest, and the success of your company is your best work. It's not going to be the mediocre shit. And if you're so busy doing mediocre shit and doing a mediocre job of that stuff, when that big thing comes along, that important thing, that thing that you should knock out of the park, the thing that is going to further your career, you're going to do a shit job of it because you're so busy doing the mediocrity and doing a mediocre job with the mediocrity. So at some point when there are, I don't know exactly what the point is, I know I'm at it, is you got to start looking at things, and if it doesn't get you excited, if you talk to your team and it doesn't get your team excited, then you should just say no. You should walk away from it. Better yet, find somebody you can refer that business to, and get a little kickback from it. And even if you don't get a little kickback, you'll probably get a kickback in some other way. It's just something to think about. Check out that podcast episode. I can't remember what episode it was. It was one of the recent ones. He says it way better than I do, but it was just like a big revelation for me. I think you agree. It's kind of...
yeah, because that exact same thing happened to me this weekend. I was going to help out a client who wanted me to edit a program that I've never used before, right? And so I edit with a program called Adobe Premiere Pro.
Yeah.
He wanted me to use an Apple editing program called Final Cut Pro X.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I didn't want to turn away his business, so I spent a few days to learn it. We got together, and it didn't work. I couldn't do it. I had to turn him away. I apologized, but he understood. I didn't charge him because of what we went through, because I didn't think that'd be fair. But everything you said kind of just made sense. Like, it was essentially like a waste of time. I wanted to do it because I didn't want to turn down his business. I'm just starting.
And you're a good guy.
Yeah. I said yes, and in the end, it didn't work. And in the end, it did waste a lot of time, actually.
And he wasted his time too, if you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
In that time, he could have found someone else. So like my knee-jerk reaction is, well, you're creating goodwill. Yeah. You're doing a nice thing. You're giving somebody your time, and I'm all about doing that. But at the same time, it wasn't productive for either of you.
Yeah.
Now, if you had if you had learned that system, and now you were now able to use that system to take on other clients because other clients worked in that system or something like that, then I guess, but then that's me trying to do the same shit that I always do, trying to rationalize saying yes.
Yeah.
And more times than not, it should be a no.
Yeah.
So, interesting. Check out his book. I don't remember what it's called. I think it's called, Anything You Want. I want to say it's something like that. It'll be one I do on the Books of the Week. But let's finish it up. Last question.
Okay. Last question is, it takes my team forever to come to consensus on anything. Do you have any recommendations for helping us make decisions more quickly?
There's a book I'm reading right now called Sprint. I mentioned it earlier on, and they talk about they have very limited time to basically discover what the problem is, decide how they're going to fix it, decide what that's going to look like, and then deliver a prototype. And so in order to make that work, they have to be very quick at deciding things, and they have to be very quick at getting a team of, I think, 7 to reach consensus on things. They have time limits. They actually have like an Apple timer or something going, and if the decision isn't made by then, they're kind of out of luck, and they might not be able to deliver that prototype by Friday. We're not talking about like little simple things. We're talking about a design and delivery of like a robot, or there are a few really interesting examples that they use in the book. One thing that they did is they brought in experts, and everybody would sort of take notes on what these experts had to say about their problems, what feedback they had to offer, and then everybody would kind of pick out their favorite pieces, solutions, I guess you could say, pin them up on a board for everybody to see, and then see if they could come to some consensus on the solutions the experts had sort of provided. And if they can't, then everybody would be given stickers, and they would basically take these stickers again to the whiteboard where all these ideas are. They're basically, I think they're just taping them to a whiteboard. They put the stickers on them, and the idea that has the most stickers is the one they go forward with. Now, I think the one thing they do a little bit differently is the decider has these sort of veto stickers. And so his stickers have a little bit more weight than everybody else's. So he can essentially be like, we're going in this direction, right? And assuming he or she has the clout to make that decision, which is generally why you bring in a decider, is they can, at the end of the day, they can, steer where you want to steer, but at least they have the opportunity to see where the experts' heads are at, where their team's heads are at, and then sort of, they wouldn't have had any of that, generally speaking. They may have had their team's ideas if they had listened so long as to gather them, but then just having them on a board like that really, I think is really helpful. And that's another thing that they suggest rather, is lightning demos. Basically what happens here is each of your team members, after they leave that day, they're to go home and start researching other different solutions in and outside of their niche or industry. So these lightning demos, basically each person does that research, they come in the next morning, and each person has 3 minutes to pitch the things that they saw and how they might fit within our solution. And everybody is furiously writing down different things that they like, and then at the end of it, everybody sort of just again posts all the things that they like to a board, stickers, they decide on it. But it's just sort of another way of presenting the data instead of bringing in experts, for example. So those are 2 good ways that have worked for us. And the only other way I can think of is, again, seeking out the opinion of other people. You can bring in customers from, say, Craigslist or something like that. So you put up an ad and you say, hey, we're going to pay you X, Amazon gift card, and we want, an hour of your time. We're going to interview you, and, you create like a Google form or something, and you have them fill out that Google form, and you pick the most ideal candidates for the survey, and then you start to learn from them. Okay, that's what I got for that, and I think I want to leave it there. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your time. I do appreciate it. I'm trying to make these videos just a little bit shorter, a little bit more concise, trying to come a little bit more prepared. So I hope you appreciate that, and it makes the listening a little bit easier. Comments, questions, whatever. I'm on Twitter at Adam G. Steele. I'm on Facebook, the Adam G. Steele. I'm on Instagram, Adam G. Steele. Comment section, I'm looking in there. I'm super stoked to answer any questions. If you haven't subscribed. I really appreciate the support. And of course, we grab this audio track and we put it up onto SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, etc., etc. So reviews, subscribe there, anything like that goes super far to supporting us, to supporting our time, and to really sort of making it valuable for us and for everybody else. So invest in me, I will invest tenfold in you. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful